Hello, 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 my people. Human Handbook. Dr. Tice here, checking in with everyone. So today's our day one, and for those of you guys that are fasting or cleansing, detoxing, welcome. Here we go. Enjoy the ride. So, a couple things just to keep in mind. You will have one thing that happens is you have more time instantly when you do this fasting. You're not preparing food. You don't have to think about the meal prep and that whole thing. And for me, I find that really nice. It just gives more time. And so, what are you supposed to do with that? Is one of the most important things. And I think the way that I learned the environment that I learned fasting in was really at the Tree of Life. And and part of that, the way that we ran the programs there, meditation and the spiritual dimension was really the main focus. And so that's what I would encourage everybody to do. And that's really what happens is when you have the extra time, and that's what this whole process is about, and why I think this is so important, because this is where you can make that switch and that flip inward into the inner space, into the inner domain. And I mean, as opposed to being externally oriented, maybe 70% of your awareness on a normal day, and then 30% maybe internally, or maybe 100% external, and not even aware at all of what's going on in the inner space. We're talking about turning that around and turning that momentum around, and I think that's the most powerful thing that needs to be cognized, is the idea and the concept that we need to move 51% into the inner space to make that shift. And then as you do that, you can make more and more and gradually interiorize the awareness. And that doesn't mean that we don't still interact in the world and aware of the world. It's actually, we're more so dialed into the world, because what happens during the fasting process, and as you will see over the process, is that the sensitivity increases. And that means that's different for different people. Some people, literally, their smell gets stronger, the sounds become more vibrant, the colors seem to have some other kind of dimension. Now it's day one, that's probably not happening, but I'm just saying this kind of stuff happens. And that's what happens when we interiorize the awareness. We're aware of what's going on in our little spacesuit here. Our God-given spacesuit here, this divine piece of equipment that we have to perceive and interact with the world. So the perception, and I think that is the sensitivity increasing by removing food from the system, creating more time in the mind. And time is where you make that switch and you move into the inner domain, where your perception of time and understanding of time shifts as you move from being externally oriented to more and more internally oriented. And the whole point is so you can tap into your own spiritual domain. And by that I mean, however you understand God to be, to dial into that and to dive into that. And there is the peace that passeth understanding inside that space. That's what we're looking for, to reside in and abide in that space. And these are the kinds of side effects that happen when we go and we embark upon this journey. And when the sensitivity is shifted, you're able to see truth more clearly, and you're able to see lies more clearly. And we're talking about discernment. Discernment at the very base, binary, foundational level of good and bad, truth and lie, these kinds of things. And I think that is what is so necessary in the world, because for me, it seems so obvious what's going on out in the world, and that it is, I don't understand why everybody else doesn't catch on and see that as a species, and this is a global thing, that we are in the process of a time in space where we need to focus on increasing our sensitivity and our sovereignty and understanding our freedom and our God-given freedoms. And so that's that's how I think about the fasting dimension, is the spiritual fasting dimension. Now, the physical stuff will happen. The physical part of it will happen. The liver will cleanse, the blood will cleanse, the stem cells will start to get triggered. In day one, basically what's happening is the excess glucose in the system is getting burnt off. Glycogen, which is stored glucose in the liver, will start to get mobilized and used up. And so then that will take you somewhere around the 24 to 36 hour mark. Around that point, whatever residual proteins are in the blood will be catalyzed. And then after that, somewhere usually around it's different for everybody, but this is why it's important to kind of pave the way as you head into this. If you start to restrict carbs, carbohydrates, and start to go low carbohydrate, you can accelerate this process. So to make that final switch, that metabolic switch, happens around 48 to 72 hours for most people. Should happen by 72. 48 kind of on the quicker end, 72 or so on the slower. So that's 3 days. And that's where the metabolism is going to be switched from the fed state to the fasting state. And that's where the primary source of fuel becomes fat for fuel. Your body starts to mobilize any excess fat and break that down, because it's a tremendous source of energy for the body. It's actually much better, cleaner burning energy for the body. And so this is what the ketone bodies is all about. This is what people call ketosis. It's really, ketosis is not a diet, it's a metabolic state, and it's the fat burning state. It's where the body starts to use beta hydroxybutyrate and the fatty acids, that they're the ketone bodies, for fuel. And the brain can use that, and the muscles can use that. Everybody can use that for fuel. And this is when the body goes into the rest, to the repairing, with food off of the system. Again, when we're in the fed state, you say you have 100 units of energy for the day, 70 or so of those units are going to go just to the mechanical act of the digestion. And so we've removed that. So when we remove that, that's when the repairing, that's when the DNA repair mechanisms start. That's where the clearing out of cellular debris and metabolic debris and senescent aging cells starts to happen. This is when the detoxification processes happen, when the liver can really fire up and begin to mobilize all this, because what happens is, when you do mobilize the adipose, the fat for the fuel, you break that apart, you liberate that out. And one interesting thing is, environmental toxins are primarily sequestered and stored in adipose tissue, which is fat. So when we go into this state, two things happen. Well, a lot of things happen, but two things happen. You break the fat apart, you mobilize the fat for energy, and then you liberate the toxins into circulation so that they can be detoxified in the liver and then finally excreted through the bowel. So usually day 1, day 2, bowel movements are going to continue, and you want that to happen, because that's really part of the detox process, is the detoxification and then the elimination. The phase 1 and the phase 2 detox, that process happens in the liver. Phase 3, what we call depuration, is where it needs to be excreted through the urine, through the bowel, through the sweat, through something like this. These are the primary routes. We call these the emunctories in naturopathic medicine. And so we got to open up the emunctories. So that's why I promote strongly the use of enemas beginning usually day 2, day 3. And if you're going to be going long, do day 2, day 3 for sure, day 3, 4. As long as if you're having bowel movements, even through day 1, day 2, okay. But as soon as there's no bowel movements, that's when the enemas really need to start, because we need to finish that cleansing process. What the liver's done to detoxify, we need to depurate that and get that out of the system. So just a little bit of the kind of metabolic biochemistry of what's going on, a little bit of the dimension of the spiritual fasting dimensions. These are the kind of things that I'm thinking of. You guys, so enjoy the ride and leave me comments. Let's stay in touch along the way here. Comments and questions, things you guys are going through, shared experiences. All of that stuff is welcome. You know, this is, I want to hear what everybody else has to say, because this is one of those things. It's just like everything in life. It's going to be different for everybody else. Again, if somebody goes to a city and they take a vacation, they're going to have a certain experience. And somebody else goes, they're going to have a completely different experience, even though they went to the same place. So it's just kind of interesting phenomena that happens. So anyway, you guys stay positive, stay up, develop the discernment, start to move and transition, make that 51% shift into the inner space as we embark and move on through the day 1, you guys. Okay, we'll check in with you mañana. Adios for now.